Welcome to the Kinky List by Skoob, where we dive deep into one of America's most fascinating and misunderstood subcultures. I'm your host, Zara Black, and today we're exploring the world of swinging, a lifestyle that's far more complex, organized, and philosophically rich than most people realize. From its mysterious origins to its modern-day manifestations, we're going to uncover the truth about this thriving community that exists right under our noses. Let's start our journey by going back in time, because the story of swinging in America reads like something out of a Hollywood screenplay. Picture this. It's the 1940s. World War II is raging, and Air Force fighter pilots are stationed at bases across the country with their wives. These weren't just any pilots. These were men facing mortality rates that would make your stomach turn. Every mission could be their last. Here's where the story gets fascinating. According to one of the most persistent theories about swinging's origins, these tight-knit military communities developed an unspoken agreement. If a pilot didn't return from his mission, the surviving pilots would care for his widow. And I mean care for her in every sense of the word, including sexually. It was about survival, community, and ensuring that no one was left behind, literally. Now, I have to tell you, this theory isn't definitively proven. The origins of swinging are shrouded in mystery, much like the communities that practiced it. But think about the psychology here. When you're facing death on a daily basis, conventional social rules start to feel pretty arbitrary, don't they? Another theory places the birth of swinging in 1950s California military bases, while yet another points to the Hollywood elite of the 1930s and 1940s, where organized sexual gatherings were reportedly taking place among the rich and famous. Are you starting to see a pattern? Power, privilege, and proximity to danger or fame seem to be common denominators. But here's where it gets really interesting. By the late 1950s, suburban America started buzzing with whispers about something called wife swapping. The media had caught wind of this phenomenon, and suddenly everyone was talking about it. This wasn't happening in back alleys or seedy underground clubs. This was happening in middle-class suburbia, behind white picket fences and perfectly manicured lawns. The folklore of the 60s and 70s gave us the legendary key parties. You've probably heard of these. Husbands would toss their car keys into a bowl, wives would randomly select a set, and boom, you had your partner for the evening. Whether this actually happened as frequently as pop culture suggests is debatable, but it certainly captured the public imagination. Then came the counterculture movement of the 1960s. Some attribute swinging's growth to hippies and nudist communities, while others point to the Sexual Freedom League, an activist group founded in Berkeley that hosted what they called orgy parties. These weren't just sexual gatherings, they were political statements about sexual liberation and challenging societal norms. By the mid to late 1960s, something remarkable happened. Swinger groups began organizing openly, shedding their underground status like a snake shedding its skin. This wasn't about shame or secrecy anymore. It was about community, organization, and legitimacy. In 1964, a couple named William and Jerry Breedlove did something unprecedented. They published Swap Clubs, an investigative book based on interviews with 800 people involved in swinger groups from over 25 cities across America. Think about that for a moment. 800 people willing to talk openly about their participation in what was then considered a taboo lifestyle. This wasn't a fringe movement. This was a significant subculture with real depth and breadth. The Breedlove study opened the floodgates for academic interest. Suddenly, sociologists and researchers were fascinated by this organized form of non-monogamy. The late 60s and 70s saw an explosion of scholarly work on the subject. Books like Open Marriage by Nana and George O'Neill, Group Marriage by Larry and Joan Constantine, and Beyond Monogamy, edited by James R. Smith and Lynn G. Smith, brought academic credibility to the study of alternative relationship structures. But here's what I find particularly fascinating. Swingers themselves started contributing to the literature. They weren't content to just be subjects of study. They wanted to be educators and guides. Self-help books like Together Sex and The Civilized Couple's Guide to Extramarital Adventure emerged, written by practitioners for practitioners. One researcher, Carolyn Simons, made a crucial observation in the late 60s and 70s that still resonates today. She identified two distinct types of swingers: recreational and utopian. The recreational swingers, and this was the majority, approached swinging as a leisure activity. They were looking for socialization, physical excitement, sexual variety, maybe even a sense of conquest. It was fun, it was social, it was recreational, hence the name. But the utopian swingers were something entirely different. This smaller group had bigger ideas. They weren't just interested in sexual variety. They were trying to create alternative communities where everything was shared: sex, resources, child-rearing, education, you name it. They were social experimenters, trying to reimagine how humans could live together. This distinction is crucial because it shows us that even within what appears to be a single lifestyle, there's incredible diversity of motivation and philosophy. In 1969, a couple named Robert and Gary McGinley changed everything. They started what seemed like a simple weekly social group for swingers, but this small gathering would eventually evolve into the Lifestyles Organization, one of the largest and oldest swinger organizations in the United States. Think about the courage this took. This was 1969, the same year as Woodstock, the moon landing, and Stonewall. While the country was experiencing massive social upheaval, the McGinleys were quietly building infrastructure for a lifestyle that most Americans couldn't even imagine. By 1973, they launched the first Lifestyles Convention. By the 1980s, this convention was drawing over 1,000 couples. Let that sink in. Over 1,000 couples willing to travel, pay money, and publicly identify with this lifestyle. We're talking about a level of organization and participation that rivals mainstream conventions. But Robert McGinley wasn't done. In the late 1970s, he founded the North American Swing Club Association, NASCA, a trade organization for swing clubs. Today, NASCA has international reach, with numerous swinging-related businesses in its network. We're talking about a full-fledged industry here, with its own trade associations, professional standards, and business networks. Since the 1960s, researchers have tried to estimate how many Americans are active swingers. The numbers vary wildly, anywhere from 1 to 8 million. In the late 1990s, McGinley himself estimated around 3 million swingers in the country, based on club tallies, membership rosters, and party attendance data. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the population of Chicago. Imagine, there's essentially a Chicago-sized population of Americans actively participating in the swinging lifestyle, with their own magazines, websites, clubs, parties, and conventions. They book entire hotels and resorts for their events. This isn't a fringe movement. This is a substantial subculture with serious economic impact. Now, here's where things get really interesting, and where a lot of confusion exists in the public mind. Many people think polyamory and swinging are the same thing, but they're actually quite different, though the lines can be blurry. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this confusion. In 1992, after the book Love Without Limits was published, the author was invited to speak at the annual Lifestyles Conference. During the presentation, she highlighted two key differences between swinging and polyamory. First, there's the relationship progression. In swinging, the typical pattern is sex first, friendship maybe later. Swingers often engage sexually before developing any deeper connection. Polyamory flips this. Friendship typically comes first, which may then evolve into a sexual relationship. Second, there's the emotional boundary question. Swinging permits sexual non-monogamy, but generally insists on emotional monogamy. Swingers are typically discouraged from falling in love with anyone other than their spouse. Polyamory, as the name suggests, encourages loving multiple partners. Emotional connections with multiple people are not just acceptable, they're celebrated. But here's where the story gets fascinating. After the presentation, a group of influential swingers approached the speaker, and they were politely but visibly upset. They argued that their practice of swinging was indistinguishable from what was being called polyamory. Some had been part of intimate networks thriving for decades, built on profound connections rather than just physical encounters. They made a crucial point. Media portrayals had unfairly sensationalized and misrepresented their lifestyle as superficial and emotionally detached. Sound familiar? The same thing happens with polyamory today, where some people claiming the polyamorous label engage in sexual activities without fostering deep friendships. The reality is that there are swingers who maintain committed relationships within a circle of partners beyond their primary relationship. There are people who carry on enduring sexual and loving relationships with several partners while also participating in casual sexual encounters. Some people even seek polyamorous connections by attending swing conventions, because frankly, these events are often hosted at better venues, are more entertaining, and attract larger audiences than polyamory gatherings. Let's talk about what modern swinging actually looks like, because the reality is far more structured and sophisticated than most people realize. According to the North American Swing Club Association, the swinging scene is witnessing significant growth annually. We're talking about events that sometimes draw crowds as large as 4,000 attendees for a single weekend. That's not a party. That's a small city's worth of people. These gatherings typically welcome heterosexual couples and single women, while generally excluding single men and being unreceptive to male bisexuality. Now, before you get upset about the gender dynamics here, understand that this is about practical management. The environment is designed to function like what one observer called an exotic candy store, providing adults with access to a broad array of sexual experiences in controlled, safe settings. The participants are predominantly middle-class individuals aged in their 30s and 40s. These are educated, culturally aware people who possess what researchers call comfortable transparency regarding sexual expression. We're not talking about people on society's margins. These are your neighbors, coworkers, and the people you see at the grocery store. Swinging culture has developed its own value system over the decades. Respect, openness, tolerance, courtesy, and sociability are core principles, with particular emphasis on relationship stability. Many participants find liberation in the lifestyle's acceptance of diverse body shapes, sizes, and age ranges. Women, in particular, often discover a welcoming environment to explore bisexual tendencies within a secure community. There are two main types of swing events: on-premises and off-premises parties. On-premises parties occur at the event site, hotels, private mansions, or cruise ships where sexual activities can take place right there. However, legality varies across the United States, with only certain regions permitting such gatherings. Off-premises parties often occur at dance clubs or bars reserved exclusively for private attendees. No sexual acts happen on site. These function as venues for participants to connect before moving elsewhere for intimate interactions. The screening process for newcomers is thorough. Most venues require reservations and put new entrants through an orientation process. This might involve telephone discussions, email descriptions, photographs, telephonic interviews, and mandatory orientations. This isn't casual. This is serious community management. Here's what really sets the swinging community apart. They've developed a sophisticated code of conduct that would make Emily Post proud. These aren't just suggestions. They're community standards that are taken seriously. First and foremost, discretion is paramount. Attendees are strictly discouraged from discussing their experiences or any details about others' involvement outside the community. What happens in the lifestyle stays in the lifestyle. Consent is absolute. Participants are under no obligation to engage in any activity against their comfort. The principle that no is inviolable and final is not just respected, it's foundational to the entire culture. Couples participate as units. They arrive together, participate as a team, and leave as a pair. This isn't about individual hookups, it's about shared experiences between established partners. Substance policies are strict. Illicit drugs are broadly forbidden, though some smaller gatherings may overlook personal marijuana use. Excessive alcohol consumption is discouraged, as are heated arguments and interrupting others' sexual experiences. The community has even developed its own terminology and practices. Open swinging means both partners engage simultaneously. Closed swinging allows one partner to step aside during their partner's encounter. Soft swinging involves sensual touching without intercourse, often preferred by newcomers or those who want more reserved interactions. Onlookers are generally welcome, but protocol typically bars them from joining active scenarios unless explicitly invited. There's a whole social dance around these interactions that newcomers must learn. Financially, costs vary widely, but a common rate might be around $80 per couple, with single women often receiving reduced entry fees. This pricing reflects the community's efforts to maintain engaging and balanced events. What's really fascinating about swinging is that it's developed into something much more comprehensive than just sexual exploration. Participants often refer to it as the lifestyle, and that term encompasses far more than sexual openness. Many swingers align with what's called partnered non-monogamy. They consider themselves emotionally monogamous while adopting a sexually non-monogamous stance. The way swingers view sex outside their primary relationship is notably different from sex with their spouse. They categorize it as sport sex or recreational sex. As Patty Thomas, editor of several popular swinger magazines, explains, swingers distinguish between physical pleasure with others for enjoyment and the emotional intimacy they reserve for their lifetime partner. It's compartmentalization, but it's conscious and consensual compartmentalization. Participation in swinging events or communities is seen by many as a way to deepen intimacy with their primary partner. It necessitates and enhances open communication between partners. Many couples report that the sexual experiences gained through swinging foster deeper, more communicative relationships, leading to more intimate and rewarding personal interactions. Demographically, swingers are predominantly white, middle or upper middle class, married and typically middle-aged professionals. Most men identify as heterosexual, while women often identify as heterosexual, bi-curious, or bisexual. There's minimal representation of gay, lesbian, queer, or transgender individuals within the swinging community. Interestingly, swinging tends toward what's called a vanilla style, avoiding alternative sexual practices or BDSM activities, though there might be some light kink like blindfolds or role play. Reports describe swinging events where activities such as anal sex, BDSM, or sex toys are minimal or absent, suggesting a more traditional approach to sexual encounters. The focus for swingers tends to be on social and recreational enjoyment rather than political alignment or radical approaches to non-traditional relationships. This distinguishes it from some other forms of non-monogamy that are more explicitly political or ideologically driven. Swinging exists within a broader ecosystem of what researchers call consensual non-monogamy. Understanding this context helps us see how swinging fits into the larger landscape of human relationship possibilities. In our modern connected world, even people in monogamous relationships often juggle multiple connections: careers, children, friendships, volunteer work, hobbies. The skills traditionally associated with managing polyamorous relationships, like extensive planning and resource sharing, have become valuable for everyone. Consensual non-monogamy encompasses many different relationship styles. Some people opt for pre-approved encounters at specific events. Others engage in what's called carte blanche event play, with freedom to interact with anyone at particular gatherings. Swinging is just one form among many. The assumption that an open relationship is inherently promiscuous is inaccurate. Just like monogamous individuals who vary in their sexual engagement, non-monogamous people have distinct inclinations. Some actively seek multiple partners, while others limit interactions to a few established ones. What's crucial to understand is that there are no universal rules in these scenarios. It's about finding what aligns best with yourself and your partners. The conversation about what constitutes cheating, for instance, varies enormously. For some, any form of outside connection is intolerable. For others, only dishonest behavior constitutes cheating. Professional dynamics also shape some relationships within these communities. There are hired educators, sexual surrogates, erotic life coaches, and other specialized companions. Participating in events with professional partners requires careful negotiation and clear understanding of boundaries. Many relationships in these communities are highly flexible, evolving based on shared journeys and experiences. The key is understanding what form your current relationship takes and whether it aligns with your partner's perception. As we close today's deep dive, one thing is clear. Swinging is far more complex than the stereotypes suggest. What began in tight-knit military communities has grown into a global subculture with its own rules, etiquette, and deeply structured social systems. This is a world built on communication, consent, and boundaries, principles that challenge how mainstream society thinks about intimacy and relationships. What's most fascinating isn't just the lifestyle itself, but what it reveals about human desire, trust, and the ways people create spaces that work for them. As lines between different forms of consensual non-monogamy continue to blur, swinging offers a rare look at how alternative relationship models evolve and why they're becoming more visible than ever. But this is only the surface. Behind the parties and conventions lie unspoken rules, hidden tensions, and stories rarely discussed in public. To explore the full story, download the Skoob app now and unlock deeper insights, exclusive episodes, and perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Thanks for listening, and remember, there's always more beneath the surface.